Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely chilling narrative, one that sits right at this terrifying intersection of ancient folklore, dark magic, and just unchecked modern ambition. We're breaking down the story of the Pishach Siddhi. Now, if you're not familiar, a siddhi in this context basically refers to supernatural powers that you get through incredibly rigorous and honestly pretty taboo rituals. But, as we're going to see, when these ancient forces are chased not for enlightenment, but out of sheer, blinding greed, the results are absolutely catastrophic. So this isn't just your standard scary story. It's really a structural breakdown of how one man's fatal flaws walked him straight into an inescapable trap.
If you don't perform all rituals with complete devotion, this city will become the gates of hell for you. Listen to that. That is a cold, hard warning delivered by a mysterious Aghori sadhu right before a horrific ritual begins. I really want you to keep that warning in the back of your mind as we go through this explainer today, because it instantly establishes this creeping sense of dread, right? It raises the stakes through the roof. We aren't looking at a simple transaction of magic for power here. This is a razor-thin line between ultimate control and literally eternal damnation.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. The greed for America.
To understand how someone could willingly subject themselves to dark magic, we kind of have to look at the man before the curse. He's torn by this intense internal conflict. On the one hand, you've got his absolute hatred for his roots. He despises his ancestral village, he's constantly arguing with his father, Ramdan, and he basically looks at his family's crumbling, ruined home as just a worthless burden. He's got total disdain for tradition, and crucially here, absolutely zero belief in the divine or the supernatural. None. But then, contrast that with his desperate, obsessive dream. He wants to sell his family's land to a city builder, grab the cash, and just move to America. And the crazy thing is, his ultimate goal isn't even some grand vision. He literally just wants to drive a taxi in the US. That's it. But he is so blinded by this desperation for quick wealth and just escaping his reality.
Which brings us to part 2, the Aghori Baba's prophecies.
And this desperate mindset, it makes him the absolute perfect target. It all starts during this drunken walk home in the dead of night, where he has a terrifying run-in with an Aghori Baba. We're talking a wandering ascetic with glowing red eyes, a hunchback, and a voice that just seems to pierce right through the darkness. But the Baba doesn't just scare him. He drops these impossible predictions that immediately, and I mean immediately, start coming true. On day 1, a company called VV Developers actually shows up out of nowhere and offers 25 lakhs for the ancestral land. Exactly what the Baba predicted. Then, day 2, a previously rejected, near-impossible US visa gets miraculously approved. No way, right? This rapid succession of granted wishes just completely blinds our guy. So by day 3, his ambition mutates. Driving a taxi in America, not enough anymore. He tracks the Baba down and straight up demands the Aghori Siddhi, which is the power to read minds and see the future. He wants to use it as a massive shortcut to immense wealth and power.
Now we enter part 3, the terrifying ritual of Pishach Siddhi.
Now, what's really wild here is how we transition from this tale of simple greed into a visceral, truly horrifying reality. The Baba agrees to grant him the power, sure, but our protagonist has to undergo a terrifying ordeal to get it. Let's walk through the actual mechanics of this dark magic ritual, step by step. Step 1 requires meeting up in an isolated field on Amavasya, that's the pitch-black night of the new moon. Then, step 2. Well, this is where the true horror sets in. The Baba creates a fire and literally begins boiling human blood and meat inside a skull, and he places it directly over the corpse of a dead newborn baby. Dark, suffocating smoke fills the air, twisting into these grotesque shapes. It's intense. Step 3 pushes the absolute limits of human endurance. The protagonist is forced to eat rice cooked over this horrific concoction, and he has to keep eating a portion of this cursed rotting rice for 8 full days. Oh, and he has to completely isolate himself without touching a single drop of water to wash or even drink for that entire time. Finally, we hit step 4. He has to feed the very last portion of this rice to the fish in a local well. The exact moment the fish refuse to eat it, boom, the city is his.
And that leads us directly to part 4, the final mistake and curse.
So, despite the rotting smell and just the sheer terror of it all, our protagonist actually completes the 8 days. He pushes through. But it's right here, literally at the finish line, where his own character flaws seal his eternal doom. See, the Baba specifically told him to use the well out in the open field. That was the right way to do it. Why? Because if a demonic entity is summoned in the open, it allows for movement, and more importantly, it leaves open the possibility of a future exorcism by a priest. But our guy walks to the field well, sees some village women fetching water, and out of sheer laziness, impatience, and just not wanting to be seen all unwashed and filthy, he turns around. He decides to use the well inside his hated, ruined ancestral home instead. And by throwing that cursed rice into the home's well, he unknowingly anchors the demonic force, the Pishach, forever to the four walls of that exact house.
The full weight of this crucial mistake is revealed a bit later by a village tantric when things go, well, terribly wrong. Let's unpack the shocking lore of the Pishach Siddhi really quick. First off, ordinary humans cannot control a Pishach, period. Only enlightened saints can do that, meaning a normal person is instantly overpowered. Second, get this, the Aghori Baba wasn't granting a wish out of the kindness of his heart. The Baba was old and dying, and he desperately needed to trick a new, living host into accepting his demon. Third, and this is such a fascinating rule of this dark magic, the Baba couldn't just force the possession. The human had to blindly demand the power 3 times, despite being explicitly warned of the dangers. And guess what? Our protagonist did exactly that. Finally, because he was this staunch non-believer with absolutely no faith to protect his spirit, his mind was basically a wide-open door for possession. He walked straight into a brilliantly laid trap.
Which brings us to the harrowing conclusion. Part 5. The Pishach's Eternal Possession.
So, on the final day, the fish in the house as well run away from the rice. The ritual is complete. But instead of waking up with supreme power, an unseen force violently grabs the protagonist and slams him right down onto the floor of the ruined house. A voice echoes, not just in the room, but inside his own mind, saying, "This is my house, and you are my body." And man, this just brilliantly illustrates the ultimate tragic irony of the story. His voice is no longer his own. The Pishach has taken full control. The guy who hated his village, who wanted absolutely nothing more than to demolish his crumbling ancestral house, sell the land, and flee across the world to America, is now eternally imprisoned inside that very house. He literally cannot physically cross the threshold of the front door ever again.
But sadly, the tragedy doesn't end with just him, because unchecked greed always brings collateral damage. His father, Ramdin, eventually discovers him. Seeing his son trapped and acting clearly possessed, Ramdin tries to rush into the house to save him, but the demonic barrier of the house violently throws the old man backward. Ramdin suffers a fatal injury and dies right there, just inches outside the doorway. So our protagonist, who is trapped inside his own body and inside this house, is forced to just watch his father die. He can't step outside to save him. He can't even perform his last rites. He is left entirely, completely isolated.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I really want to leave you with a question to ponder. Just look at the chain of events here. Was the choice of the ruined well his fatal mistake? Was his blind demand for dark power his true sin? Or was the man himself, with his utter disdain for his roots and his absolute unchecked greed, just inherently flawed from the very start? Did that make his terrifying fate completely inevitable? It's a really chilling thought, and it shows us just how deeply our own choices map out the road to our destruction. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive into the mechanics of folklore and consequence leaves you with plenty to think about.